Hello, my name is Ashley Armand, and I'm the Deputy Director of Community Engagement at the MBTA, and I'll be the moderator for tonight's meeting. We really appreciate you joining us for tonight, and Happy New Year. We're excited to have you here for 2025. Tonight's meeting is to share information and receive feedback on the MBTA's Draw 1 Bridge Replacement Project. Our speaker for tonight will be Carl Ekstrom, who's not only our Senior Director, but is also the MBTA Project Manager, and he will give the presentation. And we ask that you hold all of your comments to the end of the presentation. But before we get started, I'd like to go over a few announcements and meeting controls for folks who are not familiar with Zoom. Our first announcement is that all MBTA activities, including public meetings, are free of discrimination. The MBTA complies with all federal and state civil rights requirements preventing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, limited English proficiency, and additional protected characteristics. We welcome the diversity from across our entire service area. If you have any questions or concern, we ask that you visit the website here on the screen to reach out to our Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. We also like to let you know that we're offering language interpretation for this meeting. In this meeting, you'll be able to click the interpretation button, that's the small globe icon, and click on the language that you'd like to hear for this evening. Tonight, we'll have interpreters that speak Spanish and Mandarin. Our Spanish speaking interpreter is Enrica Ardemani, and our Mandarin speaking interpreter is Bill Chen. We also like to let you know that you can have closed captioning in the meeting as well, alongside our ASL interpretation. You can click closed caption to start viewing the closed captioning. As a tip, you can click and drag the closed captioning to move this in the position on the meeting window. And you can also adjust the caption size. So you can click the upward arrow next to the start video button, click on video, then settings and accessibility, and move the slider to adjust your caption size. We also have a chat function here for you to ask any technical questions that you ask. If you have a technical question about the Zoom itself or any features of the hearing, you can use the chat function and our technical assistant will attempt to troubleshoot your problem and get right back to you. So you can send it right back in the chat and we'll be active in responding to any question that you may have to make this meeting as accessible as possible for you. And with that, I'll pass this over to Carl Ekstrom. Carl?
Thank you, Ashley, and good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for this MBTA's Draw 1 Bridge Replacement Project public hearing for the draft environmental assessment that we have performed along with our federal partners at the Federal Transit Administration, the FTA, and we'll get started. Just like to highlight that in addition to tonight's public hearing, we will be hosting an environmental justice open house meeting tomorrow afternoon. That's Friday, January 3rd, 2025, from 4 to 6 p.m. And that will take place at the Cambridge Public Library. The Lewis Room is on the second floor of the Central Square branch. The address is 45 Pearl Street in Cambridge. It's very close to the Red Line. So we'll be there tomorrow afternoon, and we would welcome any and all interested folks to come by and talk to us tomorrow afternoon, get a little more opportunity to talk about the project and also receive feedback in comments for this environmental assessment process. So in terms of an agenda for tonight's meeting or hearing, the purpose of this hearing is to introduce and to discuss the project scope and the NEPA environmental documentation process that we have performed through a draft environmental assessment. That report and that document has been available since early December on the MBTA's website and in hard copy format throughout the cities of Cambridge and Boston at select locations that were notified when the documents were available. We will talk about some of the highlights of the Section 106 and Section 4F items that are contained within that report. and then we will open this floor to receive public comment on the presentation tonight and also on the draft EA. So in terms of submitting public comment, this meeting tonight or this hearing tonight will provide you the opportunity to give oral comments and receive those into the public record. And those comments will in turn be formally documented in the final version of the environmental assessment document. If there are any needs to modify or change the information within the document based on those comments, the team will be in a position to do that and work with our partners at the federal level to better understand and see how those impacts or comments might impact the findings of the draft documentation. You can also email the project, your comments to draw1@mbta.com. We have received a number of comments already at that address since the documentation went public. And then we're asking that the comments for this part of the project, the comment period is open until 12 o'clock noon on Monday, January 6th of 2025, wherein by we will close the comment period and look to include any and all comments that have been received to that date as part of the formal environmental assessment documentation. For any more information about the project, including a copy that you can download of the draft environmental assessment, you can visit our website at mbta.com/draw1, or you can email the project team at draw1@mbta.com. So we'll go through a quick project overview. In terms of a location, the Draw 1 bridge extends across the Charles River just northwest of MBTA's North Station, connecting the cities of Cambridge and Boston by a commuter rail system. The signal tower A is located just north of the Draw 1 bridge on the east side of the railroad tracks, and it's called out here as signal tower A. Those are two elements. You can see the two yellow drawbridges are in the center of the river, called out with a location box. North Station is in the top center of the photo. It's also the home of the TD Garden facility for the Celtics and the Bruins. The commuter rail station is in the lower level of that same building. And then a lot of people are familiar with the Zakim Bridge that is to the left of the photo, which is a parallel feature to the MBTA's commuter rail tracks. Next slide. So for purpose and need, these bridges were built approximately 90 years ago, in the early 1930s. The existing Draw 1 bridge and Signal Tower A have reached the end of their useful service lives. The Draw 1 bridge movable spans and its trestles present an ongoing maintenance challenge for the MBTA and are beyond repair for a significant useful extending their life. Replacement of the Draw 1 bridge is critical to keep the MBTA system in a state of good repair and also to improve the reliability and safety of MBTA commuter rail passengers and also Amtrak services from our northern partners in Maine and New Hampshire. This project will replace two existing bascule drawbridge structures with three new standalone vertical lift bridge structures. This project will provide 6 tracks rather than the existing 4 across the Charles River. It replaces the existing Signal Tower A and temporary control tower with a new Signal Tower A building. Construction is expected to begin in 2026 and be complete in 2034. You can see a rendering here of the finished bridges in their open or lifted position above the navigation channel, just for reference in front of the Zakim. Next slide. We will also have a modification of the North Bank pedestrian bridge to accommodate the proposed track alignment that will be included across the bridges. We have replacement of existing signal system and switch heaters associated with the bridge. Those are located either immediately adjacent to the bridge on either side of the river. And we have installation of track and bridge drainage system so that any water captured on the tracks over the river will be handled on its own independent drainage system, which is an improvement over to the situation today. I'm going to touch on the NEPA Section 106 and 4F components that were highlighted in the draft EA document. The National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, is the federal regulations by which we are bound to make sure that we comply with. The MBTA is the local lead project sponsor, and as I mentioned earlier, the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, is the lead federal agency under the NEPA guidelines. Environmental assessments, or EAs, are needed for actions or projects for which the significance of the environmental impact is not clearly established at the outset. An EA is being prepared to assess the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project or the preferred alternative as compared to the future without the proposed project, and in the documentation that's referred to as the no action alternative. We also identify measures to avoid or minimize and mitigate these impacts. And finally, to document the proposed project's compliance to the extent possible with all applicable environmental laws and executive orders. And given that the proposed project is not intended to change the operations substantially, consideration of construction period effects constitutes the bulk of the analysis required for this draft EA. Public comments on the draft EA will be considered prior to preparation of the final version of the environmental assessment document. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 requires that all federally funded or permitted projects consider the effects of those undertakings on historic and archaeological resources listed in or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, or NRHP. Under Section 106, the proposed full demolition of the Draw 1 Bridge and Signal Tower A would constitute an adverse effects on an historic property because it would result in the physical destruction of or damage to all of or part of the property. The State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, which in Massachusetts is the Massachusetts Historical Commission, or MHC, has concurred with this finding of adverse effects to the historic properties in a letter dated June 12th, 2023. A copy of which is also in the environmental assessment. A memorandum of agreement, or MOA, will be executed among the FTA, the MBTA, the SHPO, or MHC, the Boston Office of Historic Preservation, the Cambridge Historical Commission, and the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, or DCR, all of which were the consulting parties on this environmental assessment Section 106 consultation. And that MOA will identify the measures that are to be taken to mitigate the adverse effects on historic properties. Section 4F of the Department of Transportation Act of 1966 states that for federally funded transportation projects, federal protection of publicly owned and accessible parklands and recreation areas has to be provided under Section 4F. There are 9 publicly owned parks and recreational areas adjacent to this project site, each of which has been considered a Section 4F resource and then is in the immediate vicinity of the project limits. Those 9 locations are Galvin Memorial Park, Lynch Family Skate Park, Paul Revere Park, North Point Park, and North Bank Bridge. Those are all on the north or Cambridge side of the river. On the Boston side of the river, or South Bank, we have Nashua Street Park, Gridley Locks Footpath, a proposed but not yet constructed South Bank Park, and the DCR Pier and Riverfront Walkway in the southern bank of the Charles, along the southern bank of the Charles River. Our next slide will kind of highlight those same park areas just to kind of give everybody perspective. You can see the drawbridges in the middle of the image. Our North Station is to the lower portion of the image, so we've turned things around. But there's the 9 park areas and or 4F resources that we've identified that have the potential to be impacted by this project. So Section 4F of the Department of Transportation Act requires coordination with the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR, is ongoing and for their review and comment on the proposed project use of the 4F parks and recreational resources. Measures to minimize harm to these parklands and public recreation areas in the vicinity of the proposed project will be developed with and agreed upon by both MBTA and DCR as part of this process. Section 4F also provides for consideration of historic resources. For example, the Section 106 resources that I just described, consistent with Section 23 of the Code of Federal Regulations, subsection 774.13. Both of the Draw 1 bridges and the Signal Tower A, which are historic resources, are accepted from 4F consideration as 4F resources because the proposed project comprises replacement of line elements for existing railroad and commuter rail system operations. So essentially, the bridges and the Signal Tower A are part of the 106, and they are accepted from the 4F. We'll talk about potential effects and mitigation of the project. Next slide. So what we have here is just a number of areas that we have looked at in this environmental assessment. They're broken down by significant pieces, and they're referred to in this as the analysis column. So we'll talk about land use, the potential effect. There are 2 permanent easements identified that are required. One at the proposed South Bank Park, which is a very small area, about 800 square feet, for a manhole replacement, and one on the currently unmaintained land adjacent to the Massachusetts Generalist Hospital, or MGH. Their administrative building is immediately adjacent to our tracks on the west side of the South Bank. And there's approximately 130 square feet of clearance area that we need to maintain between our tracks and the face of the building. So there is an area there that we have identified and worked on coordinating that with MGH. And in order to mitigate and the commitments that we are making through this project and documentation process is that we will enter into formal easement agreements with both DCR and MGH on those 2 land use areas. As far as parks and recreation resources and pedestrian and bicycle facilities, there are public sidewalks along the east and west sides of the bridge's south trestles, which will be removed as part of the project. There's existing North Bank landings in the North Point Park and the Paul Revere Park, which will be modified slightly or shifted slightly to accommodate a change in the profile or elevation of the North Bank Bridge. And in order to mitigate and commit to that minor impact, the MBTA will continue to coordinate with DCR directly in the design and modifications of the bicycle and pedestrian facilities, which are on DCR property. There are historical and cultural resources that have been identified. As I mentioned earlier, the Draw 1 Bridge and the Signal Tower A will be demolished and replaced as part of this project. And given the proposed project would result in a permanent adverse effect to the historic and architectural resources, a memorandum of agreement will be executed amongst the FTA, the MBTA, and Section 106 consulting parties, which identifies measures to be taken to address these adverse effects. My understanding is that the signatures have all been obtained on that draft documentation, and the copy that was in the draft EA document is essentially unchanged. We'll just include the the final executed copy in the final version of the EA. So that MOA is available for your use and reading in the draft copy of the document that's available today. Next slide. As far as visual and aesthetic resources, the historic Draw 1 bridge and the signal tower A would no longer be present in the future landscape. And as I mentioned, FTA and MBTA have worked on discussion of that aspect with the Section 106 consulting parties to develop a bridge design that complements the Zakim Bridge and contributes to a shared aesthetic character. That is all highlighted and documented in the memorandum of understanding and the ongoing design reviews that will be available to those consulting parties. Removal of public sidewalks along the southern trestles of the bridge would eliminate views of the river from these sidewalks. Because similar views will remain available from the surrounding area, this potential impact would be minor and not require mitigation. In terms of natural resources, we have excavation and grading to alter local soils and topography. Because this project limits comprise area already disturbed by development, this potential effect would be minor and would not require mitigation. There's approximately 11,400 square feet of permanent fill that is currently in the riverbed that will be removed as part of this project. Coordination with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, or Mass DEP, is ongoing to develop mitigation measures prior to construction to handle the removal of that potential permanent fill. There's a sea level rise that would remain a flood risk to the proposed new Draw 1 bridge and the Tower A. And in order to mitigate that issue, electrical and mechanical equipment within the Tower A will be located on the second floor above the design flood elevation of 13 feet, which is quite a bit higher than anything because the tracks are at about elevation 4. We also we'll have flood walls, and a deployable flood barrier will be provided at Tower A, and submersible equipment would be utilized for anything on the bridge structure that would be under that elevation, but everything will be intentionally placed above that elevation. In terms of marine transportation, the clearance of the Charles River Navigation Channel will be altered, but the new bridge clearance will match the clearances or better the clearances of the controlling structures either upstream or downstream of the project site. So that's either the new Charles River Dam on the downstream side and the Route 28 roadway crossing in front of the Museum of Science. Sorry, I forget the name of the bridge, but we'll go on to the next slide. So we'll also look at some potential impacts and mitigation issues that will be only present during the construction window. As far as the land use, there's a little bit more of a temporary impact of easements that would allow for construction staging and access. So at Paul Revere Park, there's approximately 47,000 square feet. At North Point Park, there's approximately 36,000 square feet. The proposed South Bank Park has about 22,400 square feet. The DCR Pier and Riverfront Walkway is just under 5,000 square feet. And the MGH Administrative Building parking lots has about 10,900 square feet of temporary impacts to allow for construction activities to occur. So in order to mitigate those, the MBTA is committed to enter into easement agreements with the DCR and MGH. Properties not owned by the MBTA and being used during construction would be restored to their original condition after construction. There is also a temporary use of Boston Sand and Gravel property for construction access to the Tower A area, pursuant to an existing MBTA license agreement between our agency and that landowner. MBTA will continue to coordinate with Boston Sand and Gravel prior to and throughout construction to minimize impacts to their business and also their operations in the vicinity of the project. There are some community facilities and services within the project limits. There's a boat launch ramp used by both DCR, the state police, Boston Duck Tours, which may experience some multiple temporary closures or times that they will have to alter their traffic. MBTA will continue to coordinate with DCR, the state police, and any other required entities during construction to avoid impacts for their use of their ramp. As I mentioned earlier, the MGH floating dock and approach ramp would be temporarily removed to allow for construction activity right adjacent to that part of the riverway. And following construction completion, MGH floating dock and the approach ramp would be reinstalled and restored to the existing conditions. There are several park and recreational resources, pedestrian and bicycle facilities that I mentioned would have temporary impacts. Those have all been highlighted here. They've also been clearly depicted in the graphics that are contained within the EA documentation. But we anticipate multiple temporary closures of the North Bank pedestrian bridge would be required for up to 2 weeks at a time and no more than totaling no more than 1 month in total duration. And that's over a window of construction that would allow for the modification of that ramp. In order to mitigate and commit to that timeline, MBTA would develop a detour from the North Bank Park to access Paul Revere Park in coordination with DCR, and that would all be clearly identified to the public during construction and before it would be implemented by our construction activity. We've identified multiple temporary closures of 3 walkways within Paul Revere Park and 3 walkways within North Point Park that would be required for up to 2 weeks at a time, totaling 1 month. Again, that's to facilitate the access to and modifications of the North Bank Bridge. And the DCR pier would be temporarily closed throughout construction. The riverfront walkway between DCR pier and the MBTA tracks would be temporarily closed during deliveries of materials to the site. So MBTA would continue to coordinate temporary closures with DCR and the local community and have a robust means of messaging those impacts so that folks are aware when there may be temporary impacts anticipated at those locations. We've identified minor tree and shrubs near the constructions and areas in both the Paul Revere Park and the North Point Park, which would be temporarily removed in order to facilitate that construction. Portions of the proposed South Bank Park site, which was, as I mentioned, the boat trailer and car parking spaces, may be used for construction access. MBTA and DCR will develop mitigation measures for impacts to those park resources, which could include regrading, seeding, and replanting of trees and/or landscaping for the areas disturbed by construction within DCR park areas. Just a few more here. Historic and cultural resources. As I mentioned, there's a potential for intact archaeological deposits within the area of potential effects. That is the area that of land disturbance that we intend or know that may occur. And that's identified to have been a low risk or low potential. But just in case, the MBTA has developed an unanticipated discoveries plan in conjunction with the MHC and the Section 106 consulting parties that will be followed just in case any unanticipated archaeological and/or human remains are encountered during construction. There are some visual and aesthetic resources that have been identified. So the construction equipment that may result in an adverse visual impact to users of nearby waterfront parks and the North Bank pedestrian bridge and to recreational boaters. In order to mitigate that or to better understand that, Because this potential effect would be momentary and the construction condition would only be temporary, it would not require mitigation by the project. And as far as natural resources, there are a total of approximately 30,900 square feet of riverbed surface area that would be temporarily disturbed. That's basically the footprint of our existing bridge. Coordination with the U.S. Army Corps and Mass DEP is ongoing to develop mitigation measures prior to construction that will be requirements of the contractor to comply with the permitting that we're establishing with those two agencies. As far as marine transportation, there may be temporary closure or width reduction of the Charles River Navigation Channel up to approximately 1 week at a time, totaling a 2-month period overall during construction. MBTA will coordinate temporary channel closures with the U.S. Coast Guard and DCR, and notifications to mariners will be provided and updated as needed and necessary. As far as transit, traffic, and parking in the area, there will be temporary disruptions to the MBTA and Amtrak rail service on weekends. Weekend-only interruptions to commuter rail service would be accommodated through the reliance on existing subway and public bus services if needed. Also, the rail service on the weekends has been shown to be less aggressive than during the week. And so the bridge would be able, the operations would be able to maintain normal operations with some of the bridge tracks being constricted during the weekend. Limited short-term increased congestion in the study area. To avoid any unnecessary construction-related traffic within the study area, construction vehicles will be limited to designated routes and also be kept in designated staging areas. And those have all been either identified or will be continue to be identified with the agencies that are involved in this project. Portions of the MGH administrative building parking lot would be used during construction. The MBTA has continued to coordinate with MGH regarding temporary displacement of any parking spaces for construction access and to avoid disruption to their daily operations within the parking lot itself. Air quality, it has been shown that fewer than 10,000 tons per year of carbon dioxide or CO2 would be generated from the construction activities of this project. But MBTA will use best practices to minimize and mitigate any air emissions where feasible. In terms of noise, construction noise impacts would require mitigation. The MBTA will use noise control measures to reduce noise emissions and potential impacts to sensitive receptors where feasible. And in terms of vibration, the construction vibration impacts would require mitigation. And the MBTA is committed to employ alternative construction methods to minimize the use of impact and vibratory equipment where feasible, and also to not perform those activities during environmentally sensitive times of the year. So, as far as hazardous materials, the construction would involve the demolition of the Draw 1 Bridge and Signal Tower A building, excavation, ground disturbance, and removal of these areas, and safe disposal of soil and river sediment. MBTA will conduct additional soil and groundwater sampling and hazardous material investigations prior to any construction, and any potentially contaminated materials will be characterized as such and disposed of in accordance with applicable state and local federal regulations. As far as any indirect effects, the temporary workers may increase demand for services in the short term around the project area. And although this would be minor and therefore would not require mitigation, it may also provide short-term benefits to surrounding businesses with the influx of construction workers. In terms of cumulative effects, the project construction period would overlap with the construction of other planned projects nearby, whether that's other planned MBTA projects or DCR's proposed South Bank Park. So the MBTA will coordinate construction activities to ensure that there are no interruptions or significant impacts to commuter rail or Amtrak service, and also to minimize any effects to construction and ensure the safe operations of the future South Bank Park site. So those are the impacts that we've identified and how we intend to commit to the public to mitigate and also minimize those impacts. We're now getting to our public comments here. I'm going to reintroduce Ashley, and she will be moderating the comment period. Ashley?
Thank you, Carl. After learning about this project, everyone, we'd love to hear from all of you. The public comment period is now open, and we ask that you share your comment either verbally or in written form. You can do this by using the chat feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll alternate between reading submitted comments and then recognizing those who would like to speak verbally. So we ask that you are as brief as possible so that we can allow as many people to participate. If you'd like to speak verbally, we ask that you use the raise hand button. And if you're on the phone, you can press *9. Attendees who speak any additional language that's present here, you can raise your hand for the interpreters to hear and then repeat your comment back to us. When you're recognized, you'll be unmuted to speak, and then your hand will be lowered afterwards. Before opening up the floor to the public, though, we'd like to invite any elected officials or their staff to ask any questions or comments. And we ask that you also use the raise hand feature for that as well. So I'll be on the lookout for that before we get started. I also want to note that by participating in this hearing tonight, you're granting permission to have your name, your voice, and your overall likeness and essence be recorded. The full transcript of this hearing will be available on our website after this meeting is over. I'm now just going to check to see if there are any elected officials or their staff that would like to communicate with us. And then if not, we'd open it up to the general public. Going once, twice. Okay, great. We'll get the first comment now. The raised hand that we see here is from Dan Jaffe. Dan, you'll be asked to be unmuted for your comment.
There we go. Okay, three basic questions. The bridge design in your presentation doesn't look all that great. It needs a little more work. It's a visible feature from a lot of directions. So the sides, if it's concrete, needs to have some texture to it. It's too bland. The walkway on the south side appears to be no longer present. Is that correct? And then the last one is Miller's Creek flood protection for the MBTA Orange Line. Ideally, since you're right there, building a necessary infrastructure to support a levee gate at the mouth of the creek area there would benefit your protection that you need for flood protection of the tunnel works going into Charlestown on the Orange Line.
Thank you for that, Dan. That's well received. We're moving on to Andy Recker. Hi, Andy. I'll ask to be unmuted now. 1 second.
Oh, no response? No response to my points?
Dan, at this time, because this is set up as a public hearing, we will be receiving all of the comments and then we'll be providing the response after the meeting. So please note that it is well received and we'll be providing the response after the meeting.
Okay, that's all right. I just didn't understand your differences.
Oh, no problem. This is a hearing, so we're taking in all your comments. Do not worry about that. It's well received, and we'll be sending you a response afterwards.
Oh,
No problem. Thank you. Nice to see you again, Dan. Andy?
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me now. I see that. Great. So good evening and Happy New Year 2025. My name is Andy Reeker, and I'm the Transit Program Manager for the City of Cambridge. in the Community Development Department. We did have a chance to review the draft EA, and we will be officially providing some written comments by the comment deadline on Monday. Tonight, though, I do have some comments from the city that I'd like to enter into the record of tonight's hearing. And first off, the city is generally supportive of the MBTA's efforts to modernize and bring into a state of good repair the railroad system that we have here in Massachusetts. And we are very supportive of the federal government investing in this critical railroad project. At the same time, and I think this should not be a surprise to anybody on the project team, we are still disappointed that the pedestrian bicycle connection has been removed from the Draw One Bridge program. Just as a quick reminder, we think that the upstream pedestrian and bicycle connection is critical to providing a safe, reliable, and more convenient transportation option for folks looking to cross the Charles River on foot or by bicycle to and from North Station in Boston and the North Point neighborhood in Cambridge. On the Cambridge side of this project, the Cambridge Crossing development is well underway, which will create a brand new neighborhood. And when complete, there will be 2.1 million square feet of new commercial space and 2.4 million square feet of new residential space. We believe that this new development, this new neighborhood, has the potential to be one where a large percentage of trips can be made by walking, biking, and taking transit if there's conveniently connected infrastructure to nearby destinations such as North Station and the area around it. The upstream pedestrian and bicycle bridge was also one of the state mitigation commitments from the Central Artery Tunnel Project, as noted within the executive summary of the DCR, Charles River New Basin Resource Management Plan. We are hopeful, though, that the Commonwealth will fulfill its commitments to build this upstream cross-river pedestrian and bicycle bridge, given through the Central Artery Tunnel Project, and we hope we can work with our state partners on that. I would like to thank MBTA's staff for hosting tonight's virtual public hearing and listening to the comments tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. Your comments are well received, and we're looking forward to the additional comments that you'll be sending in as well. I'd also like to clarify for everyone that this is a public hearing. A public hearing is a formal meeting that allows members of the community to learn about the project proposal or any issue that we are bringing forward to you. It serves as a structural platform for the public to express their opinions and concerns and suggestions. The sole purpose is to gather your comments. It's not intended for an additional discussion, but rest assured that we'll be sending you responses back to your comments or questions after the meeting. And it's really designed to provide you with an opportunity to share your perspective on the project and any comments that you have, whether it's verbal or written at this time. I'll now move over to Anne McKinnon. I'm going to ask to unmute now.
Okay, hi. I would, in the spirit of learning about the project, I'd like to learn who is the consultant team, who's the designer, and who's the person in charge of the environmental work. Thank you. Hello?
Carl, would we be able to answer that, or will we defer back to the end of the meeting?
The consultant team is identified within the EA document. STV and is our partner on the design side. And the environmental permitting has been done under the coordination of our MBTA's environmental department, and Tess Paganelli is on the call tonight, and she has been involved with that effort.
Thank you, Carl. Jen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Rowe. I'm a regional planner with the City of Boston. And kind of echoing my colleague Andy from Cambridge's remarks, we deeply appreciate the MBTA's work on this bridge replacement project and acknowledge both the criticality of the draw to Northside commuter rail and the urgency of bringing it to a state of good repair. We do not wish to introduce any delay to the project. However, we do remain concerned about the fate of the upstream bicycle and pedestrian crossing that was previously dropped from the scope. This crossing would bridge a significant gap in the regional bicycle and pedestrian networks between North Station and Boston and North Point and Cambridge. It would be available also to the tens of thousands of MBTA passengers who use North Station every weekday, among other potential users. It's been a long-standing commitment of the states as part of central artery mitigation, just as described in the 1995 New Charles River Basin Master Plan. The bicycle and pedestrian crossing was included in the design RFP that the MBTA had released in 2019 and in subsequent applications for federal funding. And we fully support the federal investment in this bridge. We did discover that the crossing was no longer included in the project last spring. And since then, we've been urging the relevant state agencies to share a clear plan for how it will be designed and constructed and by whom. Past alternatives studied over the years for this crossing have proven infeasible. And we haven't yet heard a definitive regulatory or engineering constraint that would preclude the bike ped crossing attached or on the same footings as the rail bridge. So for all those reasons, we respectfully request that the MBTA and relevant state agencies commit to advancing the design and construction of an upstream bicycle pedestrian crossing, regardless of whether that crossing is formally included as environmental mitigation for this bridge replacement project. This crossing would replace the existing public sidewalks along the east and west sides of the existing trestles. The draft environmental assessment appropriately cites the removal of those as a potential impact. The western sidewalk in particular does offer benches, recreational fishing opportunities, excellent views of the Charles, as well as opportunities to observe and photograph passing trains and boats. An upstream bicycle and pedestrian crossing would preserve that and improve public access to the amenity. Additionally, we feel that a crossing would help mitigate disruptions to pedestrian walkways and bicycle paths that were also noted in the environmental assessment, including the very popular North Bank Bridge and well-traversed routes within North and South Bank parks. The crossing would offer longer-term benefits across and that we feel like would compensate the walking and rolling public for those disruptions. Those benefits would then only compound when Boston's Rutherford Avenue project completes the network of shared use paths from North Station to the Northern Stand Trail, the Mystic River Greenway, providing separate routes, not only to Cambridge and Somerville, but also Arlington, Medford, Everett, Malden, Revere, Saugus, and Lynn. So with that, I'll close with appreciation to the MBTA and the staff on this call for the opportunity to express our support for this important rail bridge replacement project, as well as our request for the state partnership in advancing the also important pedestrian and bicycle crossing. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your comments, Jen. Well received. We don't have any more hands raised, and we don't have any comments in the chat. Please make sure that your hands are raised so that we can make record of your comment, or just write them down in the chat, and we look forward to taking note of them. Thank you for everyone who's provided your comments already. I'd like to note that if you do not have a comment at this time, we will be here until the end of the meeting, the official time, so the full hour and 30 minutes. So if you do not have a comment now, wish to hop off the Zoom and come back with your comment, we will be here until the meeting end to make note of any comments that people have. You can also email us. We placed the email in the chat. It's draw1@mbta.com. You can also look at the draft EA on our website at mbta.com/draw1 as well. And if you have any questions in between, you can email us. You can also contact us at this phone, which we'll provide to you as well in the chat. I will note that there will be some silence unless anyone has any comments or questions, as we'll be here the full time. I did see someone raise their hand and then drop their hand. So unfortunately, I did not see who you are. If you can raise your hand again. Christopher Silva, I'm asking you to unmute now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I just wanted to reiterate some of the other comments others had made about the pedestrian bridge. You know, I believe that the pedestrian bridge is a vital component of this project, and I would encourage the project team to incorporate it, or even just to include the piers or foundations or that sort of thing, so it could be built later. The other thing is that this is given that this project is touching the North Bank pedestrian bridge and physically moving it. The North Bank pedestrian bridge could serve as the approach ramp for the north side of the pedestrian bridge so that it could get to grade. So given that this project is disturbing that bridge anyways and closing it, I would like to suggest to the project team that the pedestrian crossing actually go into the North Bank Bridge on the north side and utilize it as an approach thing. Other than that, I think the project is great. I think that the disturbances make sense and are unavoidable and are worth it for the ultimate, overall result of the project. But North Station is North Station's access to the community needs work, and for Cambridge Crossing in particular, there is a substantial amount of backtracking. So, I have frequently ridden my bike all the way from Woburn and taken North Station back. So getting across that bridge, you're either going across the Route 28 bridge, which the bicycle facilities on that are very, very poor, and Route 28, there was a cyclist fatality a couple of years ago. And then the Charles River Dam, crossing the Charles River Dam with a bicycle is always challenging. So there can be closures. The thing can open, so and it's very congested. So I would just want to encourage the project team, like others have said, that regionally, I think there is support for making this pedestrian crossing. When you're trying to do commutes by transit, the path from, you're not, unless your job is actually at North Station, the path from the train station to your final destination, that last mile is crucial for determining whether you can actually make that commute at all. So I just want to encourage you to take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Christopher. It's well noted. Dan, your hand is raised again. I'm going to ask to unmute. Dan, are you able to unmute okay?
Yeah, I just did. It flicked on me. I want to support Chris on his comments. Yes, we need that pathway. That's the other side of the bridge that I was concerned with. But when you redo the path to the pedestrian walkway, there is a terrible intersection in the Paul Revere Park. You really, if you were coming from Charlestown along the Miller's Creek pathway, and you want to get across that point, you have to take a very sharp turn over a curb. You have to climb over the curb actually that's there. So it'd be nice if that was rounded, so it is possible to take all three turns without having to make hard turns. So basically curve it versus cornering it into I think it's like 30-degree point. So it's very uncomfortable when you're walking. So that would be beneficial if we could do that, and having those walkways. Remember, this is a transit corridor, is it not? So it needs to have transit capabilities, and that is inclusive of bicycle and pedestrian. So that needs to be here. When I was part of the Cana project, that was one of our biggest points for this walkway space. That was why it was put in to begin with. We need to get it back and better, please.
Thank you for that, Dan. That's well noted as well. Okay. I do not see any more hands raised. Dan, is this an old hand or a newer hand? Okay. Oh, no comments or concerns. We'll be here on the chat until the meeting is over, so there will be a silence unless anyone has any other comments. So feel free to hop off, log back in if you have another comment, or you can email us at draw1@mbta.com, or you can look at our draft EA on our website and then submit your comments thereafter to our email, or you can give us a call. I also listed that phone number as well in the chat. Does anyone have any other comments that they would like to provide to us at this time? Or are there any parts of the presentation that you would like Carl to go over again for anyone in the room? Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like us to go over any content again, or just write it in the chat and we will accommodate that. Thank you, everyone who is still here. If you have any comments, feel free to provide them to us. Again, if you would like any clarity on anything as well, please feel free to write it in the chat or raise your hand to unmute, and we will go back to that section and Carl can provide any additional background or information you might need. If you have comments, as there has been some time and silence to reflect, feel free to raise your hand and we will get to you as well. The silence is good too, because you get to reflect and see if there's anything else on your mind, and trust and rest assured that it's well noted. Thank you, Christine, for joining us. We appreciate that comment in the chat. For the folks that are left in the room, anything you're thinking about, please let us know. We'd love to hear your comments. Again, we are here to also go back on any information that we have. So feel free to write in the chat. Let us know if you have any questions about material that Carl can go over again, or raise your hand and we will get to that. As a reminder, for more information about the project, including the draft EA, you can visit our website. We'll put that in the chat as well for you. And then again, you can email us at draw1@mbta.com and we'll be able to answer any questions or comments you have there. We'd like to note that this is not the only way you can be in touch about this project. Tomorrow we'll have another meeting in person. And also you can email us, you can call us, you can talk now. There's constant communication, and we really look forward to hearing your comments, and they're well noted. I'll write this information again in the chat for you as well. in person tomorrow for the open house. If you have any community members that speak Bangla, Amharic, Chinese, or Spanish, we'll have that interpretation present as well in person. So please feel free to not only come, but bring your friends and community members as well, who would like to learn more about this project, but also share their comments and feedback with us as well. So we have about 20 more minutes left of this meeting. Please feel free to provide your comment, as well as the alternatives that we've mentioned as well. But I'd just like to let you know that we have 20 more minutes left. All right, we're at 7:13, so we're ending at 7:30. Feel free to provide any comments that you have. You can raise your hand to provide your comment. You can also write it in the chat. And again, as I mentioned before, if you'd like us to provide any further clarification on any part of the presentation, feel free to raise your hand too or write it in the chat, and Carl will definitely provide that for you. We're here to be as responsive and inclusive and equitable as possible and to make sure that you're getting the information you need. So don't hesitate to raise your hand or write that in the chat. Jen, are you still in the chat? Jen Rowe? Is Jen Rowe still here from the city of Boston? Oh, yes, I'm asking you to
Yes, what's up?
Jen, we really appreciated your comments, and I was wondering if you could re-recite part of it again, or just start from the beginning. I want to make sure that I'm accurately making note of everything that you shared with us.
Yeah, I can kind of reiterate what we stated.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I noted it all correctly.
We also do intend to submit a written comment as well.
Okay,
Would that be preferable or?
both would be great.
Yeah.
I just also want the folks, some folks that are in the room to hear what you said again that weren't there presently.
Sure. So let's see. So I think overall we wish to comment to appreciate the MBTA's work on the bridge replacement project, kind of acknowledging the criticality to Northside commuter rail service and the urgency of bringing it to a state of good repair. City very much doesn't want to introduce any delay to the project itself. We do remain concerned about the fate of the upstream bicycle pedestrian crossing that was dropped from the scope of the project. We spoke a little bit to the benefits of the pedestrian crossing and that it's benefits closing a pretty significant gap in the regional bicycle and pedestrian networks and connecting North Station in Boston to the North Point Park in Cambridge. That this connection, as has been noted by others, would be available to the MBTA's commuter rail passengers who use North Station and among many other potential users. We spoke to the commitment of the states as part of the central artery mitigation to this crossing, and as it was described in the new Charles River Basin Master Plan in 1995. I shared a little bit about how the crossing had been included as part of the project scope, and it was in the RFP that the T released in 2019. And we'd also seen it in applications for federal funding as recently as last August, and that we had when we saw that the project was no longer, or the crossing was no longer part of the project this past spring, we've urged the T and then relevant state agencies to try to share a plan for how it will be designed and constructed, and by whom if it wasn't through this project and by the T. Our understanding was that, many, not me personally, but colleagues of mine have experienced various iterations of alternatives to having the crossing be provided on the same kind of structure and footings as the North Station drawbridge, and those designs, eventually didn't move forward, were found unfeasible, and then for that reason, we feel like the kind of likeliest way forward for this crossing is to be on the same footings, and and we also haven't yet heard a really definitive regulatory or engineering constraint that would mean that the crossing, could not be on the same footings as the rail bridge. So for all of those reasons, we are requesting that the T and other relevant state agencies, likely Mass.DCR, kind of work together and find a way to advance the design and construction of the crossing, whether that be included as part of the environmental mitigation of this project um, or not. And we feel like there is a connection to the impacts of this bridge replacement project, in that there are existing public sidewalks on the east and west of the trestles, which was noted in the environmental assessment as a potential impact. In particular, the western sidewalk is one that we do see members of the public utilizing for fishing and for just watching passing trains and boats and taking photos. We've having an upstream bicycle and pedestrian crossing in that similar area would replace that amenity and also improve access by allowing folks from Cambridge to easily get there as well. And then we also felt like while the disruptions to the pedestrian walkways and bicycle paths described in the environmental assessment are temporary. There are impacts to the publics that like and that walk, and that building this connection crossing over the Charles would go a long way, provide benefits to those same publics as well, and would kind of even go beyond in terms of when other projects that are being advanced, including our own Rutherford Avenue project, it would connect this crossing to other assets of the region, including the Northern Starin Trail and the Mystic River Greenway. And then, yeah, I ended closing for, again, thanking the T and staff for hosting the space. Particularly appreciative of you all holding it for the full hour and a half, in case anyone joined late. And yeah, we do intend to write a comment as well.
Thank you for that, Jen. We really appreciated that comment, and I just wanted to make sure that we noted it accurately, and we have. So thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate you joining us and providing that comment and also submitting it again. Thank you. Okay, so does anyone else have any comments that they would like to provide us, or write it in the chat, or anything that you need more clarity on? As I mentioned, we're going to the full time, which means we'll be here until 7:30. So feel free to write it in the chat, email us, call us, unmute yourselves, raise your hand and we'll all unmute you. Or yeah, we're here for that.
So Ashley, I'd like to just take a minute to say thank you to you and your team for hosting this meeting tonight and making it possible, both on the virtual side and the preparations to get everybody aligned for that. So while we have a minute, I just wanted to say thank you to you and supporting the project in this way.
Thank you, Carl. That's so kind of you and well received as well. Appreciate supporting this project. It's a vital project and it's important. And I've seen how much time has been taken to be poured into this project, all the expertise that's been poured into this project. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it benefits the community and how we can continue to learn from the public as well and informing the project. So thank you for that. We're at 7:26, and so that means we are a couple minutes to 7:30. I'd like to wish you all a happy new year. It's 2025. We made it. I hope you have a prosperous, joyful, and abundant new year filled with so many surprises that are well deserved for all of you and ways for you to continue to be joyous and curious and encouraged as we move into the year ahead. And with that, feel free to write any comments in the chat. For more information, you can go on our website for the draft EA. For any media or press inquiries, you can go to our email at mediarelations@mbta.com. And yeah, we're nearing to the end. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Robert wrote all of this in the chat as well for you to have access to. Thank you all again for joining us. We're a couple minutes towards the end, but feel free to send us your comments via email as well. I'd also like to take this time to thank our interpreters here tonight, Sarah and Matt, who are longtime ASL interpreters. Thank you, as well as our Mandarin and Spanish-speaking interpreters. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you, Enrica and Bill. It wouldn't be a meeting without you all as well. Thank you. And with that, just as a reminder, we'll be back again tomorrow in person in Cambridge. So we'll see you all then. Joe, can we go to that slide to where our meeting is going to be tomorrow so that folks can have access to it? Yep, right here. So we'll be at the Cambridge Public Library, 45 Pearl Street in Cambridge. The meeting is open to everyone. We'll see you tomorrow afternoon/evening between 4 and 6. And it will be an open house style meeting, so it'll be different than this meeting, more engaging, more ways for us to discuss with each other, and we look forward to seeing you there. Okay, and with that, we're at meeting end. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you soon or being in touch with you in chat. Bye, everyone.